Yeah, so take us back to the early days, mate. Before we get to, you being in prison, what was the early life like growing up with your parents in Mount Druitt, and how did you stumble into that life of crime? What was the kind of backstory there?
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day. I was thinking, because when I do a podcast, I always try to give them something that I haven't given them before, and I was thinking about the other day about how did this eventuate? How did that life of crime eventuate? And I can remember being in Mount Druitt and being severely harassed by coppers. We were 14-year-old, 14-year-old kids were getting bashed by the coppers, were getting strip searched and humiliated by them. So not having a criminal offense, not even committed a criminal offense, I was being treated by like a criminal by those coppers from a really early age. And then I'd see these guys coming home from prison that were fit, healthy, and I've always been a person who's always taken care of myself, being fit and healthy, and then within weeks got the latest car, and rumors would spread that they were bank robbers and sort of stuff like that. And I remember these coppers are treating me like a criminal. I may as well start acting like one. I'm being punished. So I gravitated, and these guys started to become my role models, and I started to ask questions, and then which led to a bit of antisocial behaviour in the form of car stealing. And back in them days, they don't have the diversion programs they have today. That was bang. One first sentence: go to boys' home. You're going to be a shorter lesson to not be a criminal. And it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, because I was sent to the notorious Darrick Boys Home, which was the subject of the 60 Minutes story because of the prolific sexual and physical abuse that took place there. And unfortunately, I didn't escape that. I was sexually and physically abused by staff members, and there's a little bit more to that. The more I think about that, there was definitely a pedophile ring operating out of there, because a lot of the sexual abusers that took work there, or that were doing it there, didn't work there, and you'd see them once or twice, and you wouldn't see them again. And I was only thinking about it the other day. I remember seeing kids getting picked up on a Friday afternoon to go home, to go out for the weekends on weekend leaves. And I can remember a lot of them, talking to them kids, and I'd say, "Oh, it's my uncle," and other blokes would say, "It's not his uncle, it's some just pedo picking them up." So yeah, it was pretty prolific there. Um, I'd done an apprenticeship there. How does like my criminal behaviour escalated because I was there with the kids from the city who were way more advanced in their criminal behaviour than us kids from the Western Suburbs and Mount Druitt. And they by demonstration they showed me how to steal a Porsche, and all different other cars, and escalated criminal behaviour and ways of breaking into sports stores and stuff like that. The stuff that was exciting, stuff that really tickled my boat, and narrow-minded people would go, "Oh, wasn't the sexual abuse enough to deter you from doing crime?" Look, pedophiles are not people who should be given out justice. If anything, it created resentments to the system. I believe that the system, the government in Pacific, were a part of that abuse, and I believe that it was government sanctioned, and nothing can tell me otherwise. And I just wanted to stick my finger up at them and say, "You can't break me." And I got out of that boys' home with every intention to escalate my criminal behaviour because of that resentment and that anger I had inside me towards the system.
Pretty narrow-minded belief, isn't it, to think that you're being abused and you're going to stop your crime, when it's probably the reverse, isn't it? Where it actually creates more crime. It makes the not the perpetrator, but the actual victim of the sexual abuse go out and reoffend, because now they're dealing with more demons. So yeah, I think it's hard for someone to empathize with you, and
I
you know,
don't get it. And I hear, and it's really sad, I see comments about this youth crime stuff in that today, and I see the redneck agenda: bash them, do whatever you want. Yeah, well, if they don't do the crime, don't do the time, you know what I mean? Or whatever they say, you know what I mean? It's okay, well, they cross the road and they get hit by a car. Simple as that. But it's really sad to think that when I see comments like that, when I see people comment like that, I say, you have got it in you. You think it's okay to touch children. You're a possibility, because you're making excuses to
yeah.
do it. You're making excuses for the pedophiles for their fucking abhorrent behavior. So when I see those sort of comments, I go, okay, there's a potential there. The coppers should be keeping an eye on that person, because you know, they're demonstrating that sort of stuff. But yeah, no, it doesn't work that way, and it created resentments. And you know, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, I look at a lot of people that went on after Darrick Boys Home and Tamworth Boys Home. They got that Tamworth and Darrick combination. There's a fair chance they would have been, you know, they would have been charged with murder at some stage or really serious violent behaviour. And there's correlations between the two and that sort of behaviour, you know, and I think it's come out in the wash. And you know, I got out with a void. I was angry, but the scary part was for me, I never smoked pot. I never was a pot smoker because um, I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. My dad was dying of emphysema, and I got out of prison, and pot became an option to me. So I'm starting to smoke heaps of pot, and you know, anything to fill that void. You know, and then at the age of 16, going on 17, I got pinched for stealing a Porsche in an affluent area of Whale Beach in Sydney. And I went before Cobham Children's Court by Justice, anyway, it doesn't matter, judge, who sentenced me to 12 months and stipulated to be served in an adult prison. And he said words to the effect of, how dare a kid from Mount Druitt come to an affluent area and steal a Porsche? Well, I had an awareness, and I thought at the time when he said that, I didn't think it was a crime to come from Mount Druitt. But anyway, he sounded a bit different, and he thought he would give me a sentence, and he stipulated to be served in an adult prison. Now, where you go to when you get sent to another, you go to a protection wing for your own protection. But how is that protection when they're going to house you with the worst of the worst degenerates in the state at the time, in the form of pedophiles, ex-cops? In my case, one of the abusers was a necrophiliac, a person who has sex with dead bodies. So I never knew that narrative. I didn't understand that narrative, and I still don't today. And I think, you know, these people complicit in child abuse by sending me there. And first night there, I was housed with two men who I later found out were convicted pedophiles, and I was sexually abused. You know.
And tell us the story about like when you were taken to the cell, the prison officer or the prison guard
They
threw
thought
you
it was
in
funny.
and basically said, "Here, have him, boys," or you know,
Yeah. Well, what happened was, you know, they give you oversized clothes and everything, so your pants are falling off you. So you're walking in with a bed pack. When I say a bed pack, it's like got your sheets, towel, and you know, and other stuff in it, and you're holding your pants up. So they just do it to humiliate you. And when they open the door, and on the front of the cell it says, you know, their names, what their name is, and the amount of time that they're doing, and so they put me in there. I put a mattress on the floor because there was bunk beds. And then the screw shut the door, and one of them, he had a bit of a laugh. He said, "Have fun, boys," and had a wink at the bloke on the bottom bunk. And then they thought that was funny, and I just don't get, for the life of me, I don't get that. It's only another pedophile could sort of say that, you know. So I could only get joy out of that. And so anyway, so I was sexually abused that night. I went there with a co-accused. He was sexually abused that night. The next day, I come across this gremlin-looking creature. He had like a hunchback and had a singlet on with all just fucking hair coming out of his shoulder. He looked like a fucking, you know, just nightmare. He had that, yeah, those dark Coca-Cola fucking glasses, and he come my way, and you know, took an interest in me, and he said, and it was straight away. It was like, "Mate, come around to my cell. I've got some stuff that's going to help you." And I was reluctant. And then he had some sort of heavy bloke say, "It's in your best interest to go around there, or you're going to get fucking seriously hurt." And so I went around there, and he said to me, "Oh, mate, you're going to need this." And it was like
heroin, wasn't it?
down syringe, you know, cut down syringe, and it was fucking horrible. Like the plunger was made out of a piece of thong. The thing to push in, it was made out of a nail, and it was all burnt and everything like that. It's a fucking nightmare. And he said, "Put your arm out." And I put my arm out, and the other bloke was just growling at it. The big heavy bloke was growling at me, and to do it. So I just did as I told, and I was crying and everything, and I had it, and it was heroin, and it made me sick. It made me vomit. So I've sat down, like I went on my knees to vomit in the toilet, and he pulled my pants down, sexually abused me while I was vomiting in the toilet, and yeah. But what I knew there and then, I guess, you know, I look back and I think, you know, I didn't even feel it because the heroin really numbed me. The heroin really numbed me, And I realized from that day, and he told me what it was. He goes, that's heroin. I've got plenty. Just shut your mouth and go along with what I do. And he done that just to keep me quiet from not talking, because he, even if I did talk, them officers back then wouldn't give a fuck. They knew what was going on. They were humored by it, and anyway, I left Long Bay prison. I spent 3 months there, and I went back to the boys' home, and I was numb. I was fucking really fucked up mentally, and the crazy part about it is not one psychologist, not one counselor asked me what happened to you. Not one. Not one asked me. I was quite evident that I just was a withdrawing kid, that I didn't talk. I didn't talk to authorities in particular. I was very quiet around them. I'd jump, I'd humor with my friends, but I wasn't a kid that was very well, and none of them asked me one question, and not for a long time did anyone ask me. And I think it's a really important question to ask. One of the things I do in the work I do when I work with kids, I go, "Hey mate, what happened? Tell us about it. I'm here."
Yeah.
And the relief on their faces when you ask them that question, that there's trepidation, but you say, "Hey, listen, there's a safe place here, man. I'm here to help, and you can't say nothing to me that's going to shock me. So what happened? Let's get talking. Let's work this out. Come on, let's unpack this backpack." But no one ever done that to me. And now I was eventually released from the boys' home. My parents lived in Liverpool, which is close to Cabramatta. It was the beginning of the heroin epidemic, and I made my way there every day. And I used heroin every day. Eventually apprehended for some breaking and enters on Grace Brothers, which is now David Jones. I was breaking into them. So my criminal behaviour was escalated. Went from car stealing to serious breaking and enters. And and this time I went to Long Bay Prison as an adult, and I was moved to a mainstream prison, which if I would have been moved to a mainstream prison in the first place, that sexual abuse, and in particular the introduction to heroin, would happen. Because I know if I was in a mainstream prison at 17 years old, I know the Mount Drill boys would have kept me away from blokes from my area, wouldn't have allowed heroin to go nowhere near me, because we hadn't aware there was a lot of people that were heroin addicts, and even the heroin addicts would have just kept it away from me. They said, "No, you're not fucking your life up with this." So I was pretty dirty. I was pretty angry, and I had some hate. I talk about I had a backpack of stuff that didn't belong to me. I was hate, resentment, anger, guilt, shame, embarrassment. And I was carrying this backpack, and I was weighing heavy on me. And the only time I would feel like I could take it off is when I had a shot of heroin. And and I gravitated to the bank robbers. And I wanted to know everything about bank. In jail, water finds its own level. Bank robbers hang around bank robbers, drug smugglers hang around drug smugglers, breaking in a car steal. But everyone has their own tribe. But these blokes welcomed me, and there was a lot of them that tried talking me out of it. So don't go down that line, son. But and then there's ones that say, "Mate, we accept that. That's what you're going to do. We can't talk you out of it. This is how you go about it. This is how you're doing properly." And I learned a lot of lessons from them guys, and some were really kind with their time. And I'm glad some of them give me a decent education about not hurting people. It was the main one. Don't hurt people. Don't make people panic. And I don't think the word trauma back then was thrown around the way it is now, but it was like, don't spin people out, I think was the terminology, and I think, it was that simple. And I think that was, I guess that was a tag for trauma, which we know today. And so, and I based myself, and I got out after, 2 or 3 years with every intentions of going robbing banks. And I went to the parole officer. I met a mate there who I robbed my first bank at the parole officer. They tell you to stay away from criminals. Part of your parole condition is to stay away from criminals. But when you go to the parole office, you meet up with them anyway. So, that's what I did. And, I was working. There was a part of me trying to stay out of it. I was working and everything, but I was using heroin on weekends. And then I had a flexi day and went and robbed my first bank. And, and it was massive for me. It was massive. It was like not so much for me, it was getting that sort of money that I didn't have a care in the world. I could use copious amounts of heroin. I could feel no pain, that sort of stuff. I robbed one on a Monday, robbed another one the next Monday, and I went on a bit of a roll of bank robberies until I got apprehended.